everyone, and welcome to this bucket list live session. Thanks for joining. Welcome to all those who are watching across Facebook and YouTube today. I've got Dave with me, and I've also got Nick joining us as well from the Altitude Centre. Hi, Nick. How are you?
Yeah, good. Keith, yourself?
Very well, thank you. So we're going to predominantly do a chat today with Nick on altitude. If you've got any altitude related questions, then please do put them in the comments and we can get Nick to answer those as well. Just a quick recap. We've had a fairly busy month so far already, January. We've had a Aconcagua trip out, and you've just come back from Chile and Easter Island.
Yes, yeah.
How was it?
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. It felt like a once-in-a-lifetime trip for me. Santiago is an amazing city, and Easter Island, I think the word is mystical, really. It's mystical, but just so relaxed as well, and such a lot to learn about, and lovely people, and brilliant climate, and warm sea. And do I have to go on?
Well, I mean, I've always said that Chile and Easter Island is my favourite trip that we offer, and you had it on your bucket list. Yes. So I finally thought it was time to let you go on and go on it. How does it feel in relation to other trips you've done? Where would it be on your list?
Definitely top three. The three I've got are very, very different, so that's why I can't pick between them. But it's definitely top three. And if you ask me to go again, the answer is yes.
Well, it's my turn.
And all of our bucket listers absolutely adored it. They all adored it. It's just so different.
Yeah, it's certainly an amazing country. If you've got Easter Island on your bucket list, then do check out your trip. And we've done something very different because we always used to offer Patagonia and Chile and Easter Island at the same time. And we were struggling to, obviously, both are very expensive trips. You know, they are once in a lifetime style trips. So what we are starting to do now is run one each year. So this year was a Chile and Easter Island. Next year will be a Patagonia. The following year will be a Chile and Easter Island again. So at the minute, there are no dates up for Chile and Easter Island because the next one will be 2028. And those dates will come out in March. But if you want to get on the list for that one, then let us know and we can get you added so you can get your place on that one when it comes out. But it's definitely a destination to go to.
Yeah, sure is.
Talking about destinations, we are here in London. Dave and I, we've just been up and set up our stand because we are up for the destination show for the next 4 days. Dave and I are looking after the stand tomorrow, and then the team will be looking after it over the weekend. So if you're around in London or you're coming to Destination Show, then make sure you pop by and say hello to us. Right then, Nick, altitude. Nick is from the Altitude Centre. Anyone watching that doesn't know what the Altitude Centre is, do you want to give us a quick 2-minute description on what the Altitude Centre is and what it is you do?
Yes, so I'm Nick. I'm one of the senior performance specialists at the Altitude Centre. It's quite simple. It won't take 2 minutes, actually. Essentially, what we do is we help climbers get ready for the mountains. Doesn't matter where you're climbing, whether it be Machu Picchu at the low end through to we're lucky enough to work with climbers climbing the biggest things on earth. What we specialize in is helping people get ready for that challenge and make sure that when they land in destination, wherever that may be, they're as ready as they can be to A, make it to the top, but B, have as much fun as possible, because as you said, a lot of these are once in a lifetime trips. So make sure that you actually enjoy the entire experience as well, which is really important.
There we go. So if you're watching and got any questions on altitude related issues, or you're worried, put your questions in the comments. And then as we're talking, we can put those questions to Nick as well and get the answers for you. Also, just say a hello in the comments as well, so we know who's actually online at the minute and who's watching. It'd be nice to say hi back. Nick, you said about getting people ready, but there's that other thing that you do as well, which I think is potentially more an important thing, and that is the initial testing to actually let people know how their bodies would cope with being at altitude.
Yep.
Because for other people, you know, especially people in the UK, it's not easy to go to altitude.
No.
A lot of people might think I want to go and do Everest Base Camp, or I might want to do Kilimanjaro, but the highest I've been is 300 meters above sea level. Like, before you make those decisions, I think a great thing that you offer is actually to go and put your body through some testing. Do you want to explain how that testing works?
Yeah, and that's exactly it, Keith. You hit the nail on the head there. The whole point of our testing arm that we do in London, and the product name for people looking is called the Mountaineering Consultation. But essentially, the aim of that is to understand how your body copes with altitude and understand what your strengths and weaknesses are at altitude. The test isn't to tell you whether you can or can't climb, because I think we both agree anybody can climb most things with the right preparation. It's just a case of understanding where your baseline starts and understanding whether you're more or less at risk of suffering altitude sickness. Your ability to deal with altitude is completely genetic. It's got nothing to do with age, fitness, gender, or anything like that. Fitness is a big one. We get a lot of people who think, oh, I'm physically fit, I'll be fine at altitude. Sadly, it doesn't quite work like that. And I think we can both think of people who we've been on trips with who are probably significantly fitter than us, but have struggled with the altitude, and those who are unfit and maybe have coped really well. But yeah, that testing arm of what we do aims at understanding how somebody copes, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and gives them that information so we can then, if needed, build a program around that to help and support them. And the other thing that it does that's really, really useful is, as you said, it kind of demystifies the altitude slightly and kind of humanizes it slightly. It's a great way to understand A, what's going to happen, but B, what it feels like and why. Because if you can understand the why, when you're in location, you can then make the right behavioral changes, you can kind of act in the right way to kind of then manage that. And then obviously the other benefit is you can come and meet me and my team, and we've all been to altitude. We've all kind of, you know, been there, done that like you guys have. So if you've got any questions, you can kind of get a second opinion on bits and pieces, or maybe ask some questions regarding things that you haven't thought of before. So it really aims at being a one-stop shop.
Yeah, and what does the testing entail?
Yeah, so the testing's broken down into three main sections. I'll describe our standard testing. We do have a more advanced testing, so for things like Mera Peak, Aconcagua, kind of the highest things that you guys do, it is slightly different. But from the majority of people, the testing is broken down into three elements. The first is a basic health screening to make sure there's nothing climbers need to be aware of. The second is testing in the resting state. So we conduct two tests done sitting down, nice and chilled, to kind of get some baseline data. And then the third phase is done in the active state. So actually walking, moving, and replicating exactly what you're going to be doing in the mountains. And that tests up to 5,100 meters. So covers any climb up to 6,000 meters is what that's designed for, to, again, give that level of risk.
And I mean, I've been through the testing process. It's a really interesting process to go through. And it is just as simple as putting a mask on, isn't it?
Yeah, it's non-invasive. We don't take any invasive measures. People are always worried about bloods or things like that. We don't take any of those, and it is a very straightforward test. Takes 60 to 90 minutes, so there is some time commitment needed, but it will give us everything we need to produce your individualized report. And then, as I said, like, go from there, and it's then done on a case-by-case basis as to what that climber needs and what suits that climber best.
And what is the machine actually doing?
Yeah, so the machines we use create what's known as normobaric hypoxia. So when you go to altitude, it's the partial pressure of altitude, partial pressure that changes, which then changes basically the amount of oxygen you breathe, because oxygen molecules are just more spread out. We don't quite do that for obvious reasons, because kind of pressurization and depressurization is quite a hard thing to do. So we use normobaric hypoxia. So the partial pressure of the air is the same, but the percentage of oxygen being fed through the machine to you as an individual changes. So we can then match that to the heights that we're going to. So for example, some of the most famous heights we see on trips is like 3,800 meters. It's about the same height as the Branko Wall on Kili. It's not too far off Namche Bazaar in Nepal. That's the equivalent of 13% oxygen. Or another height is 5,000 meters, which is up towards Gorup Chek in Nepal, up on Summit Push on Kili, and that's 11% oxygen. So we can kind of match the oxygen percentage to the altitude to get the heights that we need to test people and to train people.
And what would happen then if someone came to testing and it showed that their body did not react well to altitude?
Yeah,
what would
the
you
first
do
thing,
for
the most
those
important.
people?
Yeah, the most important thing is you can still climb. It's not the end of the trip, and it doesn't mean you can't book your trip. Like, people always come to us and say, oh, I'm going to use this data to decide whether or not I go. The answer will always be you can climb. You know, the technology we have nowadays can fully acclimatize people up to 6,400 meters. So anything up to that height, we can fully acclimatize people for. So the answer is never you can't climb. But if the testing does show that there is a level of risk, there are typically two options that a climber can look towards, and it's normally based on location. If they're based down in the south, the home counties, or somewhere near London, we've got our centre, which is Liverpool Street, which I know you've been to, Keith, and where kind of your testing took place. And that is where kind of the in-person training takes place. For those a little bit further afield or even international, we then have rental units. So altitude generators can be shipped to a house, and then you can train at altitude from the comfort of your own home. So it really does depend on location and what that person needs, but we've got avenues to cover inside and outside of London, basically.
And just for people wondering, like, how far do you need to do this training in advance of your trip? Like, how long does it take you to get acclimatized?
Yeah, so we typically ask the testing to be done like 3 to 12 months out. So that gives us a little bit of time frame to work with, because we don't want that phase being rushed. But for the majority of people, training will take place in the last 1 to 4 weeks. You know, the body's ability to deal with altitude, it makes adaptations very, very quickly. Think about Kili, you make all those adaptations in 5 days. Nepal, you do it in about 8 or 9. So it does happen really quickly, but it equally wears off really fast as well. So we need training to be done in the final weeks leading up to your climb. So if somebody's climbing in like the Nepalese season this year, which is like April, for example, we will see a lot of climbers in like March and late March. Equally, if you're climbing in September or October, we don't really need to do anything from a training perspective until like September time. So we really can kind of cram it in and focus it in on the last phase, because that's where you need to do it, basically.
And how long does the body stay acclimatized for?
Yeah, depending on the dosage that somebody's exposed to, it's typically going to be somewhere between 5 to 14 days at sea level before you start to see a drop off. So for the majority of people, they'll do their session with us, you know, a day or two before they fly out. They might spend a day flying, 1 or 2 days in the city, and then head to altitude, whether that be Lukla, whether that be starting the Kili hike, whether that be straight into Cusco. They'll be at altitude there. So somewhere between, you know, 7 to 14 days. The only climb that we typically tend to run into a bit of an issue with that window is Kili, with people doing safaris and things like that. So we always say, if you're going to do a safari, just do it after Kili rather than before Kili. As from my point of view, it makes life a little bit easier. It also means you get a nice celebration after the mountain rather than doing the safari and thinking about the mountain that's to come.
Yeah, so Rowena's just asked and said, would you recommend this for the Annapurna circuit?
If you've never been to altitude before, then there's always going to be a benefit to it, because if you struggle with altitude, you'd rather know about it in the UK rather than on location, because we can do something about it. If you've been to that height before and not struggled, as long as you follow the same behaviors, you are in a much more likely, you're much less likely, to suffer altitude sickness. Just because you've been to altitude before and been fine doesn't mean you're going to be okay again. But typically speaking, if you've been to that height and haven't suffered and follow the same behaviors, you will normally be okay. So yeah, if you've never been to altitude before, it might be worth considering, because Annapurna is high enough for people to start to suffer. But if you have been to altitude before and not suffered, you may well get away with it.
Yeah, I mean, Rowena, I mean, you've done Killy with us before, so you've been higher on Killy than what you're going to be doing on the Annapurna circuit.
You'll probably be okay.
Yeah, and you're going to be spending longer getting there as well than you were on Killy. So I think in that sense, I think if you were fine on Killy with no issues or very few issues, then I think with the Annapurna circuit, I think your body would be.
I'd agree. Make sure you eat enough, drink enough, and follow the same rules. Like, don't be arrogant with it, and don't kind of be blasé, because it will still eat you up and spit. But yeah, if you've got that experience, you should be okay.
Nick, do you just want to explain to people as well, like the difference between like the effects of being at altitude and also like altitude sickness itself, because they are two real completely different things, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you go to altitude, first and foremost, expect to feel different. Like, you are not going to feel the same, because you're putting your body in a situation or an environment, should I say, that it's not used to. You've never been there, or you haven't been there for a long time. Like, you will feel differences. Some of the major ones that people feel quite quickly are an increased size of breath and an increased frequency of breathing. So you'll breathe faster and you'll breathe deeper. A higher heart rate, that's completely normal, and a much higher urination rate. So people tend to go for a wee an awful lot more. All of those things are completely normal and completely natural. And in line with that, you might experience what we know, it's not a scientific term, but some people term it like acclimatization sickness rather than altitude sickness. But that's essentially where you wake up, have a bit of a headache, get the body going, have a drink and crack on. They're not really things that we're worried about. They are short-term issues that can be dealt with through hydration, nutrition, or even just a paracetamol. What we're more interested in is those falling onto the spectrum of altitude sickness. So that's a stepped process ranging from mild, which feels like a bit of a hangover for all intents and purposes. So like persistent headache, loss of appetite, grumpiness, sleep disturbance, all of those sort of things. Like, imagine you've on like a Saturday morning, if you've had a heavy Friday, that sort of feeling. Again, they aren't the sort of symptoms that tend to stop you climbing, but they do become a little bit less fun, should we say, and they do start to wear you down a little bit. That then can progress to moderate altitude sickness, is where you're getting vomiting, severe headaches, and start to develop ataxia. That's probably the one where we start to think more long-term about somebody's well-being. Ataxia is where you see kind of a change in coordination or a change in kind of behavior. So again, linking it to alcohol, because they do relate quite closely, actually. It's that friend that's really drunk, that can't walk in a straight line, is slurring their words, and probably needs a little bit of a hand. That's typically the point where the guide and the bucket list team and travel will start to sit down and think about what's best for that climber, because what you don't want is somebody moving to severe altitude sickness, which ultimately can end in fluid on the lung, fluid on the brain, or rescue. So that's a much more serious situation. So the basic headache in the morning's fine, don't worry about that. But if the headaches start to last longer, you're really not eating, you're starting to feel sick, let the team know, because they can manage and mitigate things to hopefully stop it there and not let it go any further, basically. So that's the progression on the mountain of how altitude moves.
And what about Diamox as well, Nick? Because we get asked that a lot.
Yeah, Diamox is a really interesting one, and I think it's somebody's personal decision, because at the end of the day, you as an individual are the one that is going to have to take it. If anybody is considering Diamox, go and speak to their GP, because it is a prescription drug, so it is controlled. So you do have to get it from the doctor. But there are pros and cons to it. Like, the pros of Diamox is that it can speed up the rate of acclimatization. Doesn't work for everybody, and it's not this magic pill that's going to solve all your issues, but for some individuals, they do find it really effective. There are some drawbacks to Diamox as well, around the fact that it's a diuretic, so you need to go to the toilet even more. Some people have some ethical considerations about technically the misuse of a prescription drug, which in theory what it is, because the drug itself, Diamox, is made for glaucoma, so it's actually made for your eyes, but the benefit altitude is kind of a side effect. And there are some other side effects to be aware of, ranging from kind of tingly fingers, tingly toes, which can be a bit disconcerting, to things like headaches and a bit of grumpiness. So actually taking Diamox can sometimes give you the symptoms that you're trying to avoid. The biggest thing is it's a personal decision. So if you do want to take it, get your own supply in the UK, go and speak to your GP to make sure it mixes with any other medication you're on, and they can speak to you through dosages, and then just let the team know. Because if you start showing symptoms on Diamox, that is more serious than showing symptoms not on Diamox.
Yeah. And the other place, I mean, you mentioned going to your GP. I mean, I hear a lot from a lot of our customers who say that their GP knows nothing about it and they won't do anything. So sometimes a travel clinic is a good option to go and discuss.
Yeah, it just comes around that misuse of the drug. Like the NHS are very, very hot on drugs being used for the right way. So unless your GP has an understanding of why you want it, you may struggle. So yeah, online pharmacies or travel clinics can be a safer bet for some people.
And, you know, our advice to people is always, you know, because of the side effects, like the tingling is one that affects quite a few people, is to go in, you know, take it for a couple of days in the UK before you go on your trek. Don't head out and start trying it.
And also make sure you're not allergic, because if you've never taken something before, you'd rather have your allergic reaction here than Kathmandu or Moshi, because there's a little bit more support.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, it's like you say, it is a personal choice. But the other thing I hear so many people saying is, I've got Diamox and I might take it if I need it. Like, that's not what Diamox is for.
Yeah, it's got two uses. Like, it's used in a couple of different ways, and the way it's used in the mountains is ever so slightly different from how the GP prescribes it. There are two kind of courses that people can follow, from reactive to preventative. As I said, the best thing to do is speak to your GP, and then when you're in location, there will be doctors around at Namche and places like that, and you can have a chat to them as well. So yeah, like, speak to the professionals, and they'll be able to advise you better than anybody else.
Yeah, exactly. Nick, do you just want to explain like what our partnership is with you guys, and if people want more information, like how they can find out more, or what other options there are for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So where we kind of help and support bucket list climbers is to try and be that port of call and answer all things in terms of their high altitude trips. So whether it be the physical training, like we've got training plans provided that bucket list climbers can get discounts to, through to testing on site, through to training. And our whole aim is basically to support you prior to your trip. So when you land in location and hand over to the bucket list team, you're as ready as you can be to have a great time and have that once in a lifetime experience. In terms of getting in touch, the best way to do it is just drop us an email. So it's city@altitudecentre.com. You can find it all online. Give us a call. We've got a web chat. There's forms and links in the bucket list website as well. So there's loads of different ways you can find us. But yeah, if you want to have a chat, like, I appreciate people might not want to ask questions on a big Facebook Live. Just give us a call. We're mostly friendly once we've had a coffee. So just ask away, and any one of the gang can give you a help, and we'll have the information you need.
And then obviously we've got our monthly Zoom calls as well that we do.
Yeah, absolutely. If anybody wants a bit more of an in-depth dive, we do half an hour to 45-minute Zoom calls every month. I can't remember the date exactly for the next one, but it's on the bucket list website. Just sign up for that, and that covers all things fitness and altitude. And it'll also start to chat about some of the group testing we do for the bucket list. So yeah, anybody wants to dive into things further, join that, and then you'll be able to ask all things, and it's a little bit more one-to-one or one to small group, and people can kind of get involved.
Yeah, Tom's just put a link into the chat there. Perfect. Where it covers that, and obviously, if Tom, have you got a link as well? If you can pop the link up there to book into the Zoom calls as well, then if people, there we go, it's just come up now. Look, just like magic. He's good, old Tom, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
Well, Nick, thanks ever so much for coming on and having a chat with us today. The Altitude Centre are going to be joining us in Birmingham towards the end of March, 20th, 21st of March. Is it the 21st or 21st, 22nd?
Yeah, something like that.
That weekend in March at the National Outdoor Expo. So if you're around the NEC on that weekend and you want to come along, they'll have a treadmill there. They'll have the box step there. They'll have some testing machines there. So you can put one on and kind of get a feel of what it's like. But, you know, Nick and a few of his team will be there as well. So if you've got any questions on treks or altitude related issues, then they'll be there as well that weekend to answer away. Nick, thanks ever so much for coming on. Really appreciate it as always. Dave, we've had a comment in from Ollie who's asked, are there any places you would never put on your bucket list?
Oh my goodness. I don't. God, that's a hard question. If it's a new experience, yeah, I will. Yeah, okay. This is to do with my preference, not to do with places being bad. But if there's a choice with somewhere that is adventurous and somewhere which is easygoing, it will always be adventurous for me. And yes, that's just the truth of it. If there's a choice, but if Easter Island comes up again, I just want to say this publicly. Yes, I would go.
Yeah, I think for me, I don't think there's anywhere that I wouldn't go and give an opportunity. I think there's places that I've been that I wouldn't go back to, but I'd always go and give them a go and give them a chance. And obviously, there's places that appear higher up my list of places. But I think for me, if I haven't been there before, then it would be on my list because I'd want to go and tick it off and say I've been there, whether it was good or not. Well, that literally brings us to 7 o'clock. We've done it within half an hour, so that was pretty good going. Like I said, we're at Destination Show this weekend. If you are in and around London, pop down. It's the largest travel show in the UK. We've been in there setting up our stand today, and there's a lot of choice in there, shall we say? So come down and have a look. We'll be back next month with another Ask the Expert session. Nick and his team will be running our monthly Zoom call. And like I say, Tom's put a link into there as well. And I think that's pretty much it from us. So we'll be back in a month's time. Thanks very much.
Perfect.
Bye-bye.
Bye.